All right, folks, continuing our discussion, we just spoke with Ralph Peters, and I'm very proud to be joined once again by Elliott Abrams, Senior Fellow for Middle East Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations and former Deputy National Security Advisor for Global Democracy Strategy for President George W. Bush. And Mr. Abrams, welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
By the way, have you seen any of the paintings that former president has done?
No, I have not, but I'm going to be down there in June, so I will take in the exhibition.
Yeah, we did a segment here because, of course, the left is calling them Forrest Gump paintings, blah, blah, blah. You know, Bush derangement syndrome. There's no cure for it. But he has his own style. The first painting I saw was when he gave one to Jay Leno on one of the last shows Leno did, and it was a portrait of Leno. And we put up Putin and other foreign leaders, and he's got his own distinct style. It's very interesting and very. I think it's great. But yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Ukraine. First of all, Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst, was on before, and he said that Putin is brilliant because he's already accomplished what he wants to accomplish, and he's diverting our attention. He's always one step ahead, and he's already in eastern Ukraine. He's taken eastern Ukraine. He's succeeded in eastern Ukraine already. You agree with that analysis?
Well, he has as of today. I don't know whether it's going to stick. I think the striking thing to me is he's not paying any price. You know, we can't determine exactly what he's going to do. We can see it. We can watch it. But the best way for us to deter him from doing more is put a price on it. You know, we have a list of a dozen guys who can't come to the United States anymore. Big deal. What we have not done is to hurt his economy sufficiently.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And what do you think those phone calls are like? Obama just had one. I mean, I can't imagine that he keeps having these phone calls with Putin, and then Putin just goes ahead and does more after the phone calls.
Well, I agree with you. I think these calls are a mistake in the sense that, you know, they're having a sort of chat, a schmooze relationship here while these actions go on. The mistake is these are the kinds of calls you have with friendly leaders in Britain, in France, in Canada. He should have a 1-minute conversation with Putin saying, you do this, you're going to pay. That's all he needs to say. But unfortunately, of course, we're not making him pay.
No, we're not making him pay at all. So what do you, I'll ask you, what you think the end game is for Putin? I mean, will he be, if he does successfully remain in eastern Ukraine and accomplish what he wants there, is that the end of it? We have the NATO exercises that they're trumpeting, that they're conducting in the area, warning Russia, don't do anything because, you know, we have a treaty and we will abide by that treaty and defend any of our members. Do you think Putin would dare test that?
No, I don't think he's going. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants to destabilize Ukraine. I don't think he wants to go in. I think he wants to make sure that he's got a veto power over everything that happens in Ukraine. And he can do that without invading. He'll do it with the usual KGB tactics that we now see him using in Ukraine. And, you know, he'll say, look, I'm willing to do a deal. You'll have a federal Ukraine where the eastern third of their country is under his thumb and has essentially a veto power in Kiev on anything the government does. And he can do that without an invasion.
All right, let's move on. You wrote a couple of pieces involving the Middle East peace, so-called peace talks, and which I spell P-I-E-C-E because that's how they want to dismantle Israel. But talking about the piece that you wrote a couple of days ago, standing firm to blame Israel, and you know, I refer to John Kerry. I might have told you this already, as the Palestinian spokesman. I mean, my goodness, you know, oh, you don't have to call it a Jewish state. Too much is being made about that, and Israel's being, you know, they're the problem here, and they haven't made the decisions necessary for peace. And you know, Obama sits next to Abbas and calls him a great man of peace. When just, I mean, we know what he did just the other day. The story about another murderer with Israeli blood all over his hands, honored, and they named a street after him or a soccer stadium after him, as they do for so many of these. And this is a great man of peace to this administration. So your piece, standing firm to blame Israel, is right on target.
Well, you know what's bizarre here? Stand back for a minute. The Palestinians' leadership theoretically desperately want a Palestinian state. They should be demanding that there are negotiations. They should be demanding that Israel stay at the table, and they should be saying, we'll negotiate morning, noon, night, anywhere, anytime. Instead, we and the Israelis end up having to bribe them to come to the table. It's weird. It's as if they're doing us a favor to come to these negotiations. Everything's completely backward.
Now, what we could get from that or take from that, I would assume, without putting words in your mouth, is they don't want peace. They don't want a negotiated peace. They would love unilateral statehood declared by the United Nations. And what would that gain them? Because Israel would never recognize it.
Yeah, I think the Palestinian leadership is right now fat and happy, the ones in the West Bank. Life is good for them. There's a lot of foreign aid money flowing in. Some of it is being diverted to, accounts in Zurich and places like that. A lot of corruption. They rule. If there were ever a change, sovereign state, new state, elections, they don't have elections, they might lose some of their power. So from the point of view of the people running the place, from Mahmoud Abbas on down, they're not in such a hurry to have a state and to have elections. Things are pretty good. They go from home to home, from fancy hotel to fancy hotel. It is not urgent for them to get a state, whatever Palestinians may want. You have an elite on top there in the Fatah party that is doing pretty well.
Let's talk about the horrific terrorist attack in the West Bank where you had an Israeli family on their way to Passover Seder. And there hasn't been too much publicity about it, or too much media coverage about it, unfortunately. And they murdered the father of the family, left the wife and the 9-year-old child wounded. And you wrote a great piece at the Council of Foreign Relations blog talking about the Hamas reaction to that. And it speaks volumes.
Well, it really does. You get this nonsense, and unfortunately we get it from Secretary Kerry. What is the real reason there's no peace? Well,
Israeli settlements.
Exactly. They built another apartment house.
Right.
Here you have Hamas applauding and encouraging this kind of murder of a family on its way to a Seder. And Hamas, after all, runs half the Palestinian territory and half the Palestinian population in control in Gaza. And Ismail Haniyeh, the man who made that statement about what a wonderful thing this was the Palestinian prime minister in 2006, 2007, and is the prime minister of Gaza, of Hamastan. So that, to me, there's a real barrier to peace. You have people who think it is their purpose in life to murder Jews. So I just don't see that, we're never going to get anywhere. When we see building a house or an apartment as a real barrier to peace, but Hamas, with its charter, which is one of the great anti-Semitic documents of the last 100 years, is in power over really half of Palestine, or what they want to make into Palestine.
Yeah, and this administration has just turned everything upside down. I mean, George W. Bush was such a great friend of Israel, as previous presidents were, but I believe he was the first one, if I'm not mistaken, to stand there next to Sharon and the King of Jordan, and I don't remember if the Palestinian leader was there or not, and he said Jewish state. And that impressed the heck out of me. And of course, now our administration says, stop making such a big deal about it. Crazy
Unfortunately,
stuff.
I think they're anything that's getting in the way of getting some kind of deal, whether it's Jewish state or settlements, or it doesn't really matter what it is. If Secretary Kerry thinks it's getting in his way, he's willing to throw it overboard. In the search for some kind of negotiation with the Palestinian leadership that I will tell you right now is never going to sign anything. Mahmoud Abbas is not going to sign anything. So all of this is a kind of fruitless effort.
Yep, I gotcha. Mr. Abrams, have a happy rest of Passover, and thank you very much for coming on, sir.
Thanks very much, Steve. Good to talk to you.
Take care. Good talk to you. Elliott Abrams, ladies and gentlemen, knows his stuff. Oh, for the days of his influence, and George W. Bush as the commander-in-chief. Oh, it just seems like a decade, like a century ago. Steve Malzberg Show. Come back.